Hi guys, in this video we're going to discuss about variables. But before discussing variables, let us try to discuss first what are data. Data comes in different forms. So the C language have created a certain categories for these kinds of for different data. So they are the data types. First type is the character. So these are data that in a form of a symbol. Symbol can either be a letter, a number, or just a special characters. And other data are in the form of a number, whole number. So these are categorized as a data type integer. So for integers, we can only the C is only able to hold up to 32,776 positive and negative for each range. So if whenever you are using an integer, a data integer, you will be required to use a placeholder of %d. For character, you are going to use %c. We also have data that is in a form of a number or a rational number with decimal places. So they are considered to be of data type float. A placeholder is that you are using will be %f. And for other data types, we also have strings, which is placeholder of which uses the placeholder %s. So these are data that are in the form of a characters, a series of characters, I mean. So that this series of characters are enclosed by a double quote. So for characters, you only have single quote. For string values, you have double quote. Other data types such as long int is just the same as the integer but bigger range, more than 2 million of its range, positive and negative 2 million. While the long float has a bigger number of decimal places involved. So for if it's float, you only have up to 7 decimal places, but a long float has 16. So these data types are very important when we create our variables in C. So when you create variables in C, this would be the syntax. Before you can use variables, you must be able to declare them. Declaring the variable happens inside the main program, right after the bracket. So when you declare your variables, you should follow a certain syntax. So for the syntax in declaring a variable, you just have to give first the data type or the keyword that corresponds to the data type, a space, and the name of the variable that you are going to use. So these variable names are the ones that we are going to use instead of the values. So let us create a character variable. So start first with the keyword car, and then space, that's the data type, then the name of the variable, let us say first the middle initial, and then end it with a semicolon. So this would mean that the computer will be able to recognize this variable name, middle initial, as a character. So all character values can be stored in this variable name. To declare an integer, we just simply use the keyword int, then the name of the integer, let's say score, and then semicolon. To declare a float, you just simply type the keyword, and then the name of the variable that you wish to create, and then end it with a semicolon. Remember that the variable is only able to hold one value at a time. So once a value is given to that variable, it can only be changed if you are going to assign a new value. So let us assign values to your variable. So we can assign values to your variable at the beginning or when you declare your variables. For example, if we go back to line 6, if I'm going to assign the character capital letter A to middle initial, then I would declare it, car, space, the name of my variable, which is middle initial, space, and then equal sign, space, and the value, say A. So this time, whenever I use middle initial, it would mean that I am referring to the value A. So if you're going to use that variable name, let us try printing the value of the variable middle initial. So we can create a printf statement, and a word that will be displayed, and then a placeholder which uses %c, where the value of middle initial will be displayed. And then outside the double quote is a comma, and then the variable that will display the value of the variable that will be displayed in replace of our placeholder C. So we write middle initial. So whatever the value assigned to middle initial, that will now be the value that will be displayed on this portion. So when you run this program, you would be printing these texts, the middle initial is, and followed by the value of the middle initial, which is letter A, because that's the value that we have assigned when we declared our variable. So let's run the program. As you can see, A appeared because that was the value of middle initial. So you can also do the same for the integer and the float value. So for integers, just simply write a number which will be stored to score in this case, and for float you would be required a decimal place. So if you want to display the values of score and average, you just simply use the printf, since printf is used to display text value as an output. So we are going to use %d because score is as an integer data type. And let's do the same for the float. Comma, and then so I just have to add /n here, or you can add /n also here instead of there, but I prefer to add it here, and then another /n here, so that these two statements will be placed the next line. So this time when I run the program, it would look like this. So always remember that for every placeholder that you create, there should be a corresponding value. It can be a particular value, or in this case we are using variable. So once we change the value of the variable, output also changes. As you can see, I have changed middle initial to this value, and for the score as well as for the average for these values. So when I run, you will have these values. This output. The good thing about using variables is that you can use the variable name anywhere in the program. So if you want to display it again, all three of them at the same time, you just can simply use a printf, then display those values. For example, %d for the score, %c for the character, and at the same time, %f for the average. So if I have these placeholders in this order, I will also make sure that the first value or variable that will be displayed are of integer data type. So I'm going to use here score, then followed by a comma. Then we have a character, which is the middle initial, and then followed by the float, which is the average. If you won't be able to follow the same data type, then you will have an incorrect output. So when I run this program, it will show that this value for the score, this is the value for the middle initial, and this is the value for the average. There are also rules when you create your variable names. Variable names are user defined, which means that we are the ones who are going to create for those names. But we have to follow certain rules when it comes to creating your variable names. So the first rule is that a variable name should start with a letter or an underscore. This means that if it does not start with a letter or an underscore, then that variable name is not valid. For example, if you have a variable name 1, like that, which starts with a number, then this one is not a valid name. But if you start with an N or an O, this one would be considered as a valid variable name. So besides starting with a letter or an underscore, a variable name should comprise of either a combination of letters, numbers or digits, and an underscore. So when you create your variable names, the composition of that variable name is a letter, a number, or and with a underscore. So for example, if you have this value starts with a letter and its composition is of letters and numbers, then this one would be a valid variable name. If you have this variable name, this will not be considered as a valid variable name because it has special character or punctuations. So this special character makes this variable name invalid. Even though it starts with a number, with a letter, so this one will still be considered as a invalid variable name. Remember, when you create your variable name, it should be one word, because a space is considered to be a special character. So for example, this one is not considered as a valid variable name because of the space. So that's why my example, I have combined middle initial into one word. So, but you can also use this technique so that it becomes valid. So this one becomes one word, so it is now a combination of letter and then underscore, so that makes it valid. No duplication of a variable name. This means that once you have declared the value, the variable name, you can no longer declare it in another data type. For example, um, float score. Okay, so here in my example, float was declared first. Score, I mean, was declared first as a float, and the next statement, it was declared again using an integer data type. So this one is not valid in C language. When you run your program, it will cause an error. So make sure to take a look at those variable names that you have declared, that there are no duplications. So in order to avoid that one, you may change the case because variables are case sensitive. So this means that a uppercase and a lowercase will have different meaning. So if you change this one into a lowercase, so score, the small letter s score, will be considered as a float, while the capital letter score is considered as an integer. So when you use your variable names, make sure that you're using the correct case. So for this one, a float, we are going to use, if you're going to use a small letter score, then you will have to use %f as your placeholder instead of the capital letter, which has an integer data type. Reserved words and keywords are not part or cannot be used as a variable name, like include. These are the examples of reserved words and keywords: int, car, float, int, return, because they already have meaning in our C programming. So all you have to do is to take note of these rules when you create your variable names. So if there are problems when you in declaring your variable names, maybe you violated at least one of these rules. So again, it should start with a letter and an underscore. It should comprise of a letter, number, or an underscore, or a combination of them. There should be no duplication. Variable names are always case sensitive, and do not use reserved words or keywords as your variable name.